Wired.com presents The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. And here is your host, David Barr Kirtley.
Hello, and welcome to episode 319 of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. Our guest today is Neal Asher. He's the author of dozens of science fiction novels and short stories, most of which are set in a future history called the Polity Universe, which encompasses many classic science fiction tropes, including world-ruling artificial intelligences, androids, hive minds, and aliens. And we'll be speaking with him today about his most recent short story collection, The Gabble and Other Stories. And now, here's our interview with Neal Asher. All right, so we're here with Neal Asher. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here.
Okay, so it says online that when you were growing up, your parents were big science fiction fans. So just what was that like growing up surrounded by science fiction?
Well, I mean, there wasn't huge amounts of science fiction in the house. There were definitely science fiction fans. It was just nice to grow up in a house with plenty of books everywhere. They had things like the old Victor Galland's yellow-spined books. I don't know if you know about those.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, they had those scattered about. Copies of things like books by John Wyndham, like Day of the Triffids, things like that. John Limington, and so it was good. They led me astray.
It says that Roger Zelazny's Chronicles of Amber was a big influence on you.
I've read an awful lot, but I must admit those books were ones I kept going back to the point where I hid them away in the loft so that I wouldn't read them again. Yeah, so that I'd almost got them verbatim. Yeah, the amount of times I read them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's my favorite series, and I've read some of them. I would say about 50 times. Actually, for my birthday a year or two ago, my girlfriend got me a first edition of The Guns of Avalon. So it's one of my most prized possessions. Oh,
that's nice. I mean, I went out. I mean, you're saying about my parents, with all the fiction that they had around them. One of the book that led me into finally getting hold of the Zelazny books, those Zelazny books, was early one of these, Jack of Shadows, and that is basically the precursor to the characters in those books. Yeah. To traveling through shadow and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say that those books or Zelazny in general had an influence on your writing? Like, could you point to anything in your writing that you think was influenced by him?
Yeah, well, I did. Yes, I like the style. I very much like the style. I mean, whether it has actually affected my style, I don't know. But it's a bit, Raymond Chandler-ish, isn't it? It's that's what it seems like to me. Those books. But yeah, I mean, I write it in the foreword of me of another book, the Skinner. Thanks to all those writers from like Aldous to Zelazny, yeah, because the books on my shelf. One time, I mean, over a period of years, I measured it, and I was reading something like 10 books a month, and this averaged out over years, so. There's a lot that's influenced me.
I mean, just having read The Gabble and Other Stories, one possible influence that jumped out at me was that Zelazny wrote a lot about characters who were men of action and very unflappable. And you seem to like to write about those sorts of characters as well. Yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, I like to see that in most books. Sometimes in my reading, I tend to get annoyed when the character is... the main character, your hero or whatever, is given too many faults. So yes, I like the idea of an unflappable character, as people have said, like a bit of a James Bond in my books. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you start writing your own fiction?
Oh, how did I start? It's in various like blogs and things of mine. I mean, I was when I was young, I was interested in everything. Yeah, I would dabble in electronics. I used to paint and draw, make sculptures, all sorts of things. back then, writing was just another one of those interests, yeah. So I think it was I'd overdosed on E.C. Tubb books as a teenager, and then I went into school, and the English teacher said to the class, "Right, I want you to write a story," which was a fairly unusual request in those classes. And I wrote something totally like derivative of E.C. Tubb, like his Doomerest saga it was, and got big compliments from the teacher. Oh, well done, that was really imaginative, and so on. So that started me off, yeah. So this was another one of my projects when I was young. So I started off writing bits and pieces. It was only later on that I made a decision that I should pursue. I should pursue just one thing. I don't want to be a jack of all trades and master of none. Yeah. So I decided on writing.
So when did you start sending your work out and pursuing publication?
Oh, well, I mean, I was writing from my teens, from school year, like 15, 16 years of age, but not really seriously, yeah. But I suppose early 20s, I started sending stuff out. I mean, I by then I had written a fantasy, which still sits on my computer unpublished, yeah. And I started sending things out. But then I discovered the small presses in England, and I started to write short stories and target them at things, and try to get something published. It's about early to mid 20s when I started to take it seriously.
And so what was that like? What were your first few publications? These were short stories. Like, what were they about?
Oh, well, I went up every step of the ladder. So, I mean, I started sending out short. It was short science fiction, short fantasy stories, whatever. And eventually I got published in a magazine called Back Brain Recluse it was 1986.
And so then how did you make the transition from selling stories to the magazines to publishing books?
Oh, well, every step of the ladder. Okay. I started sending stories out. I occasionally get a story taken for which the payment would have been like a free copy of the magazine or something like that. So I wasn't earning any money from it. And I was publishing more and more and more. And then I was getting little occasional payments. And then I ended up with some, like, if you like, a larger small press publisher where they published a novella of mine, a collection of short stories of mine, whatever. But meanwhile, over all these years, I was still sending my synopses and sample chapters to the big publishers for various books. That carried on for years, but then I was getting some good reviews in things, and I sent in Gridlinked, which is my first book with Macmillan, to Macmillan, but I also sent it in with a stack of reviews for the stuff that I'd had published in the small presses, and I think that may have got my foot in the door, and that happened in 1999, the end of 1999. Well, Macmillan phoned me up. Macmillan phoned me up and said, "Oh, we'd rather like to look at the rest of this." So that was good.
And so that book, Gridlinked, was the first book in the Polity series. Is that right?
It is, yeah. The first book, but I mean the Polity grew throughout that process of writing all those short stories as well. So yeah, but that was the first major book. Yeah.
So just sort of, what was your thought process for coming up with the Polity? What were kind of the seeds for that idea?
Well, I was writing short stories, like totally way out there, mostly science fiction, yeah. And certain things would appear in the different stories, yeah, certain aspects of a world. And then I thought, well, I like all this, and I like all these bits that I've got in there. Like there was the creatures, aliens called the Praedor appeared in one story, for example, which are in my books. But I kind of made a decision on it that I wanted a universe, a future history, if you like, big enough to tell just about any science fiction story I'd want to tell. Yeah. And that's how the Polity came about. Yeah, it was a fusion of all those short stories, and I wanted to make them all, make a world that they could all fit into. Yeah, and that was the Polity.
And so, for people who haven't read these books, I want to just sort of describe this setting. So, it's a couple hundred years in the future.
Yep. It ranges because it ranges. Yeah, it's centuries in the future, and then extending over a number of centuries as well, yeah.
Uh-huh. And humanity has expanded to about a fifth of the galaxy.
Yep. Yeah, well, it's expanded to about a fifth of the galaxy. It's covered. It's a big space opera type empire, whatever. It's not an empire. The expansion came. It starts off with the human races expanding into the solar system, and humans control humans. You know, it's human politics in charge and so on. And then something called the Quiet War happens. And this is when artificial intelligences effectively take over. It's called the Quiet War because it was relatively bloodless. Thereafter, new technologies are discovered. Basically hyperspace. I mean, I call it U-space. Ships that can travel through U-space, gateways between worlds, and with that you get the big expansion of the humans and the AIs, and the growth of the Polity. And it's big space opera.
And the AIs do a good job ruling. You say that actually, or in this book, it suggests that corruption is something that only happens among humans and low-grade sentients, and that when an AI is sufficiently sophisticated, it's kind of above corruption.
It's kind of above corruption, but it's not above. They are not above having their own agendas, very definitely, and some of them. Fall out of the silly tree, hitting every branch on the way down. So some of them go a bit crazy.
And so in terms of aliens, there are 3 alien races that are extinct, as the series opens, the Jain, the Saurians, and the Atheter. And you mentioned the Praedor are these sort of aliens that are around still. This in the Polity's history, I've only dealt with the human Polity has a war with the Praedor, yeah. But there's only one book that I have that actually deals with that, any aspect of that, and that's a small one called Praedor Moon. So mostly the war is in my books. The war is history, yeah. Mm-hmm. But they encountered this race and they had a major war. But now it's an uneasy truce between the two sides. But yeah, sorry, carry on. Well, yeah, and so the Polity, it's mostly a civilization of humans and AIs and genetically engineered. Yeah. There's not a lot of aliens incorporated into it. Was my impression.
Oh, not actually incorporated into the Polity, no. Yeah, I mean the only alien race that they have encountered, in a big bad way, was the Praedor, and they can't exactly incorporate them because because they're a little bit hostile.
Yeah. And so one comment I read online, it describes the Polity as a libertarian response to Iain M. Banks's Culture series. And I was just curious what you thought about that characterization.
I don't know that I agree with it, really. But I suppose it could be taken as that, yeah.
I mean, what do you think of Iain Banks's Culture series?
Oh, I love those books. Yeah, I loved them. Up in my top 10, I mean, would be Iain M. Banks's use of weapons. I think that's excellent. I think basically he came to the same conclusion as me about the human race, is that we're going to just keep screwing up while humans are ruling it. So he went the same kind of route, didn't he? He's I believe his AIs are in charge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, same sort of thing, isn't it?
No, I love those books. Use of Weapons is absolutely one of my favorite books ever.
Oh God, yeah.
There's a sort of similar idea where the polity is spreading out, and you call it subsuming other worlds and things. And you say that, but it's kind of democratic, that the world has to vote 80%. It has to be an 80% vote in order for it to join the polity.
Yeah, and they can secede from the polity as well. But
So you see the polity as mostly benevolent, or is it sort of, would you want to live in the polity?
Oh, good, yeah. Yeah, no, mostly benevolent. As, the way I portray it, I don't say vast amounts about what goes on inside the polity, because stories are conflict, yeah? And the thing is, inside the polity, there isn't so much of that, yeah? It's always on the line or the border of the polity, or where it's where you have a place called the graveyard, which is like the no man's land between the polity and the praetor. The conflict is out on the edge. Within the polity itself, is pretty much utopian. So, not so many stories to tell there.
Yeah, in this book, there are just little hints of what life is like inside the polity. At one point, some characters have a conversation, and one character says, 2 centuries ago, I'd have believed you, but things have moved on since then. And another character says, economics hasn't. And, one of the big premises of the Culture series or Star Trek or something is that we're going to have a post-scarcity civilization, and economics is going to completely change. Do you see the polity functions different, or is it a post-scarcity civilization, or how does that work?
It's it is pretty much post-scarcity, but I don't see that it's. I don't see I don't see money going away. I don't see methods of exchange going away. So yeah, it's pretty much. No, it's not really completely post-scarcity, but it's very, very wealthy. Yeah.
Uh-huh. I think at another point, it mentions that once the polity takes over, that AIs will be doing some of the drudge work, like driving, things like that. Do people within the polity, do they have jobs, or is it mostly sort of a leisure civilization?
Well, I've had a little look at that in some of the books. You have people taking up jobs as a hobby, as an activity, yeah. Like, for example, there's taxis. I talk about them in various stories and so on. And you'll have taxis which are just like controlled by a city AI, or even an onboard AI. Or sometimes there are people who will have the job, take the job of driving a taxi, something to do. I think that's an aspect of that kind of future that you have to think about, is boredom. I cover that with the people living for an awful long time. Yeah, they're practically immortal. Yeah, I deal with that with the NUI barrier. When people reach a certain age, they've done too much, and want to finish it. But yeah.
So how long does it take to reach the ennui barrier?
Between 150 and 250 years is when it hits, apparently.
And so people, they'll just have jobs for recreation, like they'll be a driver or something for fun. And are there other things that they would do to pass the time? Science fiction things.
Well, one of the aspects of that future that I'm covering is that the AIs are trying to basically uplift humanity, yeah. But they've got plenty of time to do it, so people will do more complex jobs, but they well, they're basically having to upgrade themselves to do so. Yeah. So yes, people will do some very, very complicated things, but they have to become more complicated themselves to get there.
There's a part where you say all the individual protection laws had been thrown out centuries ago. If a person wanted to risk his own life, that was his privilege, just so long as no other unconsenting individuals were put at risk. The powers that be look upon it as evolution in action.
Oh God, that sounds cynical. Yeah. Yes, I did. Where did I say that?
It's page 307. Let's see. That was the story, Adaptogenic.
Oh God, yeah, that's an old story. That was one written when I was actually forming the idea of the polity.
I mean, that does seem like a very libertarian idea. I was curious, why do you I don't know, not endorse the libertarian answer to the culture series idea?
Because that thought was never actually in my mind. Yeah. I mean, the way you said it earlier on, it was sort of like this was my intention. This was what I was doing. It may come across to people as a libertarian answer to the culture, but that wasn't the aim. That wasn't the intention. I just wrote it as I saw it. So yeah, maybe it is a libertarian answer to it. I've never thought that much about it. Yeah. My aim is to tell a story and to entertain.
I also wanted to ask you about the criminal justice system. It sounds like the AIs will kind of, if you've committed a crime, the AIs will kind of read your mind, and then they can. It says you can be sort of like disintegrated. You can be readjusted or have your mind wiped. I was just wondering what does readjustment consist of?
Oh, well, setting you right so that you think correctly, of course.
I mean, do you think that, because it's, when I interviewed Melinda Snodgrass recently, and she'd worked on Star Trek The Next Generation, and she said at one point that Gene Roddenberry had said that in the Star Trek universe, that if you committed a crime, that they would sort of alter your brain to make it so you wouldn't commit crimes anymore. She found that somewhat sinister or something, but I don't know. You think that's a good solution?
I think it's right. It's always sinister. It's always sinister when you think about. I mean, who is it that's doing the adjusting? It's everything, anything like that. Any kind of punishment, whatever, is sinister. It just depends. It depends who's doing it, doesn't it?
Yeah, like is locking somebody in a cage for the rest of their life is kind of sinister too. If it's not familiar.
If the powers that be are, excuse me, shitbags, then locking somebody in the cage is probably not great, is it? But no, I go through this. I think the bit that I'm putting across with this is the AIs are better. Yeah. I mean, basically, I'll go with Ian and Banks on it about that. It's, because they haven't got glands, right? But I mean, there's been a lot recently, isn't there, about the AIs that are being looked at by Google and so on now, yeah. And there's been quite a bit of debate about the programming that goes into them, and about we don't want to actually program them to be biased or this or that, yeah. Well, I think that it's inescapable that if we do produce like major artificial intelligences, well, they are going to be. I mean, they're actually going to be. They're the next generation of us, yeah, if you like. They're going to be our children, yeah. And you can't get by the fact that we are going to influence the way that they think and the way that they behave.
Well, yeah, like you mentioned, I mean, people like Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking recently have been warning about the dangers of artificial intelligence. Do you think that is sort of overhyped, or would you put any sort of limitations on AI research?
No, I wouldn't put any limitations on it. I'd never put any limitations on any kind of scientific research. I think it's like they're overhyping it, yeah. But you will have the artificial intelligences will, to a certain extent, think like us, yeah. They will not have the needs that we have so much. Though admittedly, if they are building and extending themselves, they could probably do with some money, couldn't they, to do it? But yes, I think they'll be very much like us. I see. The thing is, when people talk about this and they're going, oh my God, it's terrible danger and it's terrible, what's going to happen with AIs. But I don't see them getting that powerful that quickly. Yeah. I'm totally. One of the things I disagree with, which is people go on about quite a lot, is the Ai Singularity. Yeah, where suddenly everything's going to be. It's the rapture of nerds. It's going to be massive changes, and that kind of view about how terrible it would be with AIs getting powerful, whatever. Is linked up to this idea of this rapture of nerds. I don't think it's going to go that quick. I don't think we're going to lose control. Yeah, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that.
I think more, and I'm leaning more to it in the writing that I'm doing now, rather than the writing that I was doing, like say, 10 years ago. I rather suspect that we will evolve with them. Yeah, that the future, the far future, is going to be a point where you won't be able to tell the difference between the AI and the human. Yeah.
Yeah, that does seem to be the direction it's going. I just started reading this book by Garry Kasparov, the chess champion, and after losing his big match to the IBM computer, he started doing these experiments where he had humans assisted by computers competing against chess playing computers, and found that actually the humans assisted by computers could beat just the computers.
Oh yeah.
So that that the human and the AI both bring something to the table in terms of accomplishing tasks.
Yeah, I think it'll be an amalgamation. I think it'll. I mean, like in my books, the orgs, augmentations, grid links, and all this kind of thing. All the hardware in the books people are putting in their skulls. I think we're going to amalgamate with AI as we go along. Yeah, we are more and more as it is. With the way people have got their mobile phones stuck to their heads nowadays. I mean, but that's what's going to happen, I suspect. I don't think there's going to be this distinction of these primitive humans left behind. We won't recognise the humans of maybe even 50 years' time.
Yeah. I want to say, I think that you write the alien monsters and all the biology stuff in this book is just really, really well done. I was just curious what sort of research you do or backgrounds you have when it comes to biology.
Oh, the biology. I mean, it's one of my. It was one of my big interests. It still is one of my big interests. I've read an awful lot of biology. I think I blame my interest in a lot of certain aspects of the biology in my books to I don't know, years as a child would like turning over rocks in at the seaside and so on and seeing what crawls out. One thing that's affected that comes through in a lot of my writing is parasites. I don't know if there are lots about that in the Gabble. I can't remember.
Oh well, there's certainly some. I mean, particularly the story Chowdapt comes to mind.
Yeah, see, that comes from years and years ago. Before I was taken on by Macmillan, I was writing a novella, and I was getting interested in this idea about parasites in this thing. And at the time, I had some friends who was this woman. She was a vet, yeah. And she said, "Oh, I can lend you something to look at." And she gave me this book on helminthology, the study of parasitic worms. You know, that the kind of thing that a veterinary would have to read, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I read through that, and I read about the life cycles of parasites, and I think that's gone into all of my fiction now. That Chowdapt is an example of it, but also, I mean, me book The Skinner with the leeches and the virus that is spread by these leeches and so on. It's in most of my books now, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it's a big interest in biology that's coming through there.
Well, yeah, and as I'm looking over the list of stories in this book too, the story, oh wait, which one? No, I lost it. Acephalous Dreams, right, where the guy has sort of a whole alien species downloaded into his brain, and then it's trying to break loose.
Yes.
That was a really, really creepy story.
Oh, it's funny. I mean, when you talk about a story like that, and I'm thinking I'm reminded how it started. It basically just started off with the scene right at the start with the guy cutting the other guy's head off. Seems to be an attraction of mine. The start of Gridling was like that as well.
Yeah, if you start a story off with decapitation, I mean, it's,
well,
it's a good way to start.
Straight in there. Yeah. That was another one of the ancient races, wasn't it? The Saurians.
Yeah.
In the Acephalous Dreams, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of the parasites, there was this line about how humanity at some point in the future discovers that hornets are the most intelligent species on the planet.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah.
I was just curious where that idea came from.
Well, this is a good story for you. Before I was being published by major publishers and so on, I used to do all sorts of different jobs. Building, grass cutting, all sorts. Yeah, I used to work in engineering, this sort of stuff. And there was one time I was repointing the side of an old Victorian building. And I was about 3 floors up on a scaffold. You know what I mean by repointing?
No, not really.
No, okay. You've got a brick-built building, yeah, and the mortar between the bricks wears away and falls out sometimes, yeah, and then it has to be replaced. So you're basically going along with a little trowel and you're putting mortar back in between the bricks.
Okay.
On the outside of the building. That's repoint. That's the stuff between the bricks is called pointing, and repointing is basically putting it back. Yeah. And I was doing that, and I was up on the top of this scaffold with a bucket of mortar, and I was working away, pushing this stuff in between the bricks. And there's a really good view up there. And I looked over to my right and thought, oh, there's a helicopter over there. And then I realised that I wasn't seeing things straight, and I realised it was a great big Hornet flying right next to me, yeah, up on this scaffold. And that, I was a little bit worried about that. But what got me was the thing kept flying over and looking at the work that I was doing, yeah. It was dipping in mid-air to look at what I was doing, and then going over to my bucket and looking in that. And then coming up to me, yeah, and its behaviour looked almost intelligent. That was before I screamed and went clambering down the scaffold to the bottom. And this thing just kept coming back and visiting me, this Hornet. At one point, it even chased me inside the house, which was all a bit strange. But its behaviour looked intelligent. And obviously that stuck in my mind, and then I used it.
Do you know if there's any research on Hornet intelligence that's been done? Because I sort of got the impression from the book it was less that the individual Hornets were intelligent and more that the hive as a whole was.
Yeah, it's a hive mind. Honestly, I don't know if there has been any research done on that. I mean, I think it's a pretty old science fictional idea, isn't it? Of hive minds, and that a mind is spread across an entire hive. But it came from that, and I included it in some of those early short stories. Before I was taken on by Macmillan, and then I took 2 of those early short stories, and they were turned into the second book from them, the Skinner. So you've got intelligent hornets buzzing about in that as well.
I also wanted to ask you, I was looking over your blog, some of your most recent blog posts, and you said in your review of Altered Carbon, you said, I understand how you need to take a lighter, more understanding view of religion if you are not to alienate a large portion of your audience. Parentheses, I reckon this was why Tor US, while publishing my books, made size excuses about the line of polity and didn't publish it. I was just curious what that story was.
Yeah, well, that's one of my theories. Because I had another look at Altered Carbon when Altered Carbon came on the TV on Netflix. I had another look at my copy of Altered Carbon, and there was it was much more unforgiving of religion, let's put it that way, than the actual thing that appeared on the screen. Regarding the line of polity, it was just a weird situation because you've got the series, my Cormac series. Line of Polity was the second book, in the series, and I missed it out and then published the next one instead. And the excuse given was that it was too big. But I've seen books of that size and bigger being published in America by them, so I thought, what's all that about? And the only conclusion I could come to was that it was pretty hard on religion in that book. And maybe they didn't want to alienate what they might have thought might have been an audience for it. I don't know.
In what way was the book hard on religion?
Oh, it's very atheistic. It's in the book itself. The setting of it is a world called Masada, which is run by a theocracy. And throughout it, young writer again, I was using it. I was attacking religion. Yeah, it was all a bit. I don't know, all a bit paraphrasing Richard Dawkins, if you like, going through it. Yeah. So and that could have pissed people off. So maybe that was it. I don't know. I'm probably wrong. Probably paranoid.
It seems weird though that if it was, did they ever ask you to cut it down if the length was really the issue? No, just didn't publish that book. And it just went on and published the next one, Brass Man. And I thought, that's a bit strange. Yeah, it's weird.
Mm.
I was also looking over your Twitter feed, and you post a lot about science fiction, and you post a lot about science, and you post a lot about politics. And it's a thing that too much about bloody politics. But you've been posting a lot recently in favor of Brexit, and somebody said, "May I say what a pleasure it is to see an author with sensible views on Brexit." And you respond, "Doesn't do me any favors in PC left sci-fi land." And I was just curious, what kind of experiences have you had? Where you say
I generally. I mean, no, I just I opted out basically of science fiction land, if you like. It's I look around at the writers that I know of, that I see on Twitter, and the opinions and the political opinions and all this kind of thing, and I'm just not one of the herd in that respect. So I keep out of it.
Did you have any experiences where people said anything to you, or you just kind of felt unwelcome?
Oh, I've been attacked in the past. who hasn't? If you're active on Twitter and Facebook like that, and if you have strong views, well, somebody's going to attack you, aren't they? I mean, that just happens. Yeah, I've been called everything. I've been called racist, sexist, homophobe. Of course I have. Yeah. There you go. That's life.
But so you've just sort of withdrew, and now you're doing your own thing, and you're happy doing that.
Yeah. I don't bother with science fiction conventions because everything that I've read about that, with what goes on at science fiction conventions, has become very, very politically correct. And I can't see myself sitting on a panel or anything like that and keeping my mouth shut. So it's probably best if I don't go.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been to a science fiction convention in, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. And there are a lot of reasons for that. But yeah, part of it was just people just constantly attacking each other. And it's just a lot of drama all the time. And yeah.
I mean, I'll just, sorry to interrupt you. But I mean, for example, the kind of things that have repelled me from that entire world was, did you ever hear of this thing called race fail?
Yeah.
Yeah, where it was just this massive argument going on from blog to all across the internet, going on and on and on, and that kind of it's self-destructive and mad. And I'm just sort of like, no, I'll just back away from that. I won't be bothering with that. I'll just write entertaining books, and that'll do me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I feel some of those conversations are important, but it's just when it gets so personal and mean, it's just really, I don't know. It makes you want to kind of withdraw from some of that stuff.
Yeah, well, that's it. That's exactly what I've done.
I saw that you spent a lot of time at one point. I guess you've withdrawn to Crete part of the time. Like, how did you end up going there?
Oh, sorry.
How did you end up?
Oh, right.
Making Crete
okay.
your second home, sort of.
Well, I was obviously doing well with the writing and so on, and it's like, what do you spend your money on? I got no interest in having like a bigger house or huge cars or anything like that, and I thought it'd be just an idea get a holiday home, and fell into Crete because it was went on a holiday there once, and it's the furthest south in Europe. Very, very hot and big enough for to get for there's cities there obviously to go shopping. It's not like going to one of the smaller Greek islands where you'd have problems getting hold of things. So yeah, ended up there. I haven't been there for a couple of years now.
So did you? I don't know. Is there stuff? I got the impression from some of these stories that you do a lot of outdoor stuff. Is that true?
Me? Oh yes. Well, I have to. I mean, it's if I just sit at my desk all day, I'll end up the size of a house. So I do an awful lot of walking. I do a lot of walking here in England. I mean, but out there, I was doing an awful lot of walking in the mountains, a lot of swimming and kayaking and things like that, and writing. It all sounds very ideal, doesn't it?
I also saw on your blog that you have a thing you're doing called "Who Reads My Books," where it looks like you have readers sort of write in to talk about themselves who are fans of yours.
Yeah. It's I mean the blog is a hungry thing, isn't it? I mean, if you've got to feed the blog, it's like the plant in the little shop of horrors, isn't it? Yes, and I thought it would just be a good idea for to get something from the fans.
So, who was the first person that you had do that?
Oh God, I don't, because I did a recent batch of people, but I also did many, some, I don't know, maybe it could be 10 years ago. There was a load then, so I couldn't tell you who was the first. But it's nice actually because it's like I'm on Facebook. And I advertised it on there. Said like anybody wants to tell their story, please do so. And you get people telling their story, people who are on my Facebook page, and it forms more of a community, because they're reading each other's profiles and how they got into the books and talking to each other about it and about what they read first and all this sort of thing. And it's quite nice. It forms a little bit of a community.
So were the stories that you got from people, are they kind of what you had imagined your readers were like, or were they different than what you had imagined?
I think different from what I imagined. I don't. Brought it. I mean, not much different from what I imagined, but it brought it home that these are people. Yeah, you can get quite divorced on social media and so on from these people that you talk to, but not quite seeing them as people. Yeah, this is why you get so much bloody anger and everything on the social media, because they're not actually seeing people. No, not much different from what I imagined, but I just got closer to it, and lots of interesting stuff as well. Lots of interesting readers. What was it? I've got. I'm not sure if that one actually appeared, but there was one guy who's on a US submarine. He's an engineer on a US submarine or something, and I've got the whole collection of my books on the submarine. I'd love to see a picture of that.
Are there any other stories from those that have come out that kind of stick out in your mind?
Various. There's a motorcycle guy that races motorcycles. There's a astrophysicist. A particular one I liked was on this recent lot was this young guy who read my book The Skinner, and he was reading those books, and because they're very about. There's a lot about it's alien marine life, yeah. And a lot of the biology in my books is whatever. It's weird, but it encouraged him to take go back to college and study marine biology. Stories like that I love, hearing things like that. There's some creatures in my books called hooders. They're on that planet Masada, the one that didn't get published by Tor US. And he had a mantis shrimp in a tank, his pet mantis shrimp, and he called it Hooder.
That's really cool. I mean, I've heard some authors, when they get popular and they have connections to their fans, and a lot of those fans are experts in different topics, that they can draw on them as a resource if they, for research and so on. Do you ever do that? Do you reach out to these people and draw on their expertise in marine biology and things like that?
Occasionally I'll put a question out. The thing is nowadays, when I started writing, I mean, I would be reaching out to the shelves behind me for reference books and things like this to find out things. But nowadays with the search engines are so good that you can find out stuff on most subjects now. I'll occasionally put questions out there. I mean, I'm trying to think of one. One was whether you could cause could cause a fusion explosion with using mirrors, like vast solar mirrors focused in on one point, because somebody had argued that no, you can't do that, and I'd actually put it in one of my books, and then I got an astrophysicist coming back saying, well. It's possible. So I thought, okay, that's good enough for me.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you earlier. I mentioned that you're just constantly posting science stuff on Twitter. Like, where are you finding those stories? Are there particular outlets that you follow that you think are really good?
Well, I'm scattered across. I've got a number of science sites. I mean, generally, what I was trying to do when I'm in the process of writing something is I'd warm up my brain by reading about 5 science articles in whatever I'm interested in, yeah? Various sites, was it phys.org, yeah? Medical Express, Oh, and others like that. I mean, there's many of them. So it's just digging through the dross to find articles that really interest me, which is that's sometimes a bit difficult. But yeah.
So you've written, I think, about 25 novels now, and I was just curious, what is it like? Like, how is it different writing the 20th Polity novel versus writing the first one, for example?
How's it different? After a time, it tends to be. It's a job, yeah. Once you've done it for a long time, it's become a job. It's still the best job in the world, yeah. But it's there seems to be more. I don't know. More grunt work involved, yeah. When I started off with, you sat down and it was all about inspiration, yeah. Before I was taken on by a bigger publisher, it was all about inspiration and things like this, and you did it when you felt inspired. But it's making the transition to being a professional. Well, I can't remember the quote who said it, but there's a quote, isn't there, about I write when I'm inspired, and I make sure that I'm inspired at 8 o'clock every morning. Yeah, I can't remember who the quote's from, but yeah, it's more work. But like I said, best job in the world.
Because, it seems like it could get easier because you have figured out so much of the world already and you have all that to draw on, but then it could also get harder because so much is fixed and you don't have as much flexibility to invent things.
Yeah, yeah. It's, when I say the grunt work, that's like the like emotional aspect of it, the attitude towards it. But as far as the actual producing stuff is concerned, back when I was writing books like Gridlinked and so on, I was saying to myself, right, I'm going to write. Before Gridlinked, I was going to write. Right, I'm going to write 500 words a day. Yeah. Got taken on by a big publisher. Right, I'm going to write 1,000 words a day, 5 days a week. Yeah. Well, as time has gone on, that's gone up to 2,000 words a day, and I do them a lot quicker. Yeah, I've learnt an awful lot. It flows very, very easily. It would take back then. It would take me all day to write 1,000 words. Nowadays, I can do with 2,000 words. Sometimes it will take all day if I'm chopping things about and rearranging things and doing bits of editing in between or whatever like that. But sometimes if I'm in the flow or whatever like that, I can do 2,000 words in just a few hours. So that's changed.
So what is sort of the current state of the Polity books? The Soldier, I think, is the most recent one to come out.
Yes, yeah, The Soldier's the most recent. I've just gone through the editing of the next one, which is The Warship, and that's gone back to Macmillan, and then it will come back to me again with the copy editing, yeah, with the you needed a comma here and all this kind of stuff, yeah. So that's on its way, but I've also written to first draft the final book, which is going to be called, I hope, The Human. So I've written that to first draft, and what I'm basically doing with that, I'm just leaving it. That's just sitting on the. That's been buried in peat, and I'm going to forget about it for a few months, and then come back to it later on with a new eye.
Is there anything you want to say about that new trilogy that sort of will entice people to go check it out?
Oh, it's brilliant, wonderful space opera, and you'll be hugely entertained and enjoy it immensely. Will that do?
All right, I guess that'll do it. And so this is just sort of a random thing, but in the book there was just this setting detail where genuine fossil fuel based plastic is a valuable artifact.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's kind of funny, but I really like that kind of stuff in science fiction, because to me, part of the purpose of science fiction is to get you outside your current context and to contemplate the scope of time and space and everything. And just the idea that genuine fossil fuel based plastic would be valuable. You know, I just love that detail.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, if we'd, if in the far future we do, you know, because that's an optimistic future anyway, that we will actually spread out into the rest of the galaxy. But if we did, and like human populations is going up into the trillions, and we're on thousands of different worlds, we'll probably just about any artifact or any material, in fact, from planet Earth would probably be of value, wouldn't it? You know, this is a piece of a 20th century. This is a 20th century Coke can. You know, we have in our museum case out on the edge of the galaxy somewhere. Yeah.
All right, so Neal, so we're out of time. So I just want to ask you if you had any final thoughts, anything you didn't get a chance to mention, or do you want to give people, direct them to your website or Twitter or anything like that?
Well, I mean, I can be found on Twitter and Facebook. There's my website, which is nealasher.co.uk, where you can find out about the books and other links and so on. But internet search engines, you can find anything nowadays. I don't know. The only thing to say is read my books.
Yeah. All right, great. So we've been speaking with Neal Asher about his short story collection, The Gabble and Other Stories. It's really, really good. I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it. And so, Neal, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you. Cheers.
And that was our interview. So big thanks again to Neal Asher for joining us on the show. Big thanks as well to Holt Castoris, who just signed up this week to support us on Patreon. Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is made possible thanks to support from listeners like you. So if you enjoy the show and want it to continue, please sign up to give us $1 or $2 per episode over at patreon.com/geeks. And if you'd rather make a one-time contribution, you can do that via check or PayPal over at geeksguideshow.com/crowdfunding. So big thanks again to everyone who's contributed. We really appreciate it. All right, so that was our show. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is a production of Wired.com. For more information about the show, visit geeksguideshow.com. To learn more about your host, visit davidbarrkirtley.com. Music and voiceover produced by yours truly, Jack Kincaid. If you enjoyed this program, tell your friends. If you didn't enjoy it, tell no one. Thank you for listening.